Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you everyone for sticking around with us for the second part of this one. We're going to talk about AR meets UX today, so how augmented reality and user experience come together. We talk about this because we are from Fluor. It's a digital agency based in Cologne. We are really remote first, but we have our offices here. And in the past, we did a lot of augmented reality projects. So we're going to share some insights. It's a packed presentation, so at points we can't go too much into depth and into detail. And to be honest, we don't always have a right answer for every question, but we want to pinpoint a lot of questions today and share the experiences we had on the way so far. So when I say we, like we are the two of Fluor today, Manuela, maybe you wanted to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Manuela, a lead user experience designer at Fluor. And my background is in communication design, and I've been working a couple of years in exhibition design before that. So that's also a little bit the connection between the topic of tonight, right? Because exhibition design are kind of a type of spatial design or experience. So, and I hand back to you, Daniel.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Dormann. I'm technical lead at Fluor. Since we are a digital company and digital is our DNA, or technology is our DNA, it's pretty much from A to Z. I'm at every point of the stage of the project. So it's a good thing. I can share my opinion and my expertise on every point of the project. So that's quite cool. A short wrap up of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with a brief introduction, at least have the clearance on a couple of keywords concerning augmented reality. Then Manuela is going to share her insights on how we approach and tackle usability testing in AR, which is a big topic and raises some issues. Afterwards, talk about the different layers that augmented reality brings into this on UX perspective as well as UI perspective. Afterwards, share some insights like AR breaks a lot of boundaries. So what implications does this have on the whole user experience journey? And at last, we want to at least give a bit of a perspective on where you can start, like what's a good, from our perspective, a good starting point for getting your hands dirty with augmented reality. So the brief introduction. You can just skip ahead, Manuela. Let's start right away. So for anyone who doesn't know augmented reality, this is not the, let's not say definition by the book, but our definition that we came through with today. So basically, augmented reality is a digital layer that sits on top of real world footage. So every time what we see in the video, the camera scans an object, we see the digital layer popping up on this. And everything that happens here is in real time. So this is not motion design or post-production, but one of the key factors of augmented reality is that you can use it as is in real time. And what it does in the end is it does give this illusion of an extended space. So the boundary between what is real and what is digital really washes down and gives a whole experience. The roots of augmented reality were very much based on QR code-like markers. So the technological implications are somehow the software needs to know, like, what is this space really like? So how does it recognize it? So in the beginning, there have been these markers, QR code markers looked like it. That was taken like how to recognize the perspective by how it's skewed. It became a bit more sophisticated over the years. So what you can see here right now, this is an AR marker, which is a graphic and can be any graphic, but it's still the basis for recognizing the perspective. So in the videos, you see the application recognizes our marker and then puts on top, in this case, it was for Volkswagen, the AR elements for quiz. With a, you can skip ahead. Yeah, the whole technology became a lot more sophisticated in the last years. So let's say for the at least ongoing technology and developments that we have, we don't even need this anymore. So there's a lot of really sophisticated technology going on right now to recognize the real space. So just by analyzing the camera picture, the software can recognize what is the ground plane, what is the table, what is the floor, and even more that we won't go too much into detail about this right now, but the differentiation we have today is applications that use a marker for scanning and applications that are markerless. So let's call it plane tracking because that's the technological term for this. And at last, the projects that we do, we differentiate between the native AR and web AR. So basically, native AR is everything that is an app, so something you will install from the App Store, from the Play Store. And the other technology is web AR, so something that runs in the browser, doesn't need to download any app or any software for this. The main difference is native AR is a lot more powerful. So web AR definitely lacks some of the key performance, key features, but it's still a very cool tool. And yeah, the obvious pro is that people can just jump right into it without installing anything.
So then I'm going to continue and trying to give you some hands-on approaches and insights of real project cases dealing with usability testing and AR. So this is a very current project of ours, so current that it actually took place last week. It was a company event, so I'm going to give you some context, briefing and facts. So it was a company event for international leading managers. Total users were 360. The event took place 3 days, and we developed a native AR app with AR features like 3D models and AR type sculptures. The scope was to design a playful app where users conduct daily challenges and receive scoring. Those challenges were linked to markers. So Daniel already explained the functions of and background infos for the markers. So you can imagine that all the physical markers were placed somewhere around the location. And we had 36 markers in total. And of course, in order to use the content, the users also had to find the markers and scan them with the device. And content was information, quizzes, AR content, and media content that was linked to the markers. Talking about challenges we encountered, or at least especially I encountered when trying to do some usability testing. Our process was that in the beginning we were focusing on the main part of the app, like that people were able to find the challenges, and so we also built the different path for challenges. So we had 5 levels that the users could conduct, and all the challenges were quite different. So we had quite different user flows for that. So we were concentrating on that, and the AR feature itself was built very late within the process. So what happened was that I did 2 usability testing quite early with a mid-fidelity Figma prototype. We had 5 users or participants in total. 4 were relating to a tech-resistant persona, and which was a kind of critical persona for us. And the result was that actually you can't really simulate AR experience with a 2D prototype. That's obvious. And so what happened within the flow I created for the usability testing, those screens that we see here. The first one stands for, it's a scan the marker screen. So the camera mode opens with a small hint, which the participants clicked further. So I think the function was clear, but I couldn't really observe, of course, if they really know what it meant. Do they really know what a marker is, or a hint as they call it in the app? And do they find the marker? So there were a lot of questions that, of course, we couldn't answer within this testing. And the second screen, which shows the screen when you already scanned the marker. So the content shows up, which in this case was an RL sculpture, and a project info button on the bottom, as we see it here, which was an important entry point for the users, because through this call to action, actually, you would get information for this IR object for a special project, where you also would go further in the process to do some tasks. So I couldn't really observe how people would react in IR space, because they didn't understand this screen. It was just flat and they were like, what the fuck is this? And so yeah, that's what I thought, okay, so next time in the next project, we should build earlier directly the IR feature that we can really observe people interacting with IR, especially those people, those critical personas that are not used to interact with AR. And they don't know how to hold the phone, for example. And so yeah, the challenge here is the link between the digital and the real space, and we don't know how users would interact. So another thing that came up quite a lot of times, and we were discussing a lot between dev and UX design, was the different kind of screen levels that we have when we design an IR application, because it's a mixture of different screen levels. So I for this visualization, I just used an extract of user flow for a special challenge that was prepared for the users. So we start on the left with a map or task screen that is obviously inside the app. So imagine we are on the map navigation now. We have chosen a certain spot on the map, which is related to the project 1 here, for example. And we have different tasks for that. So 5 tasks in total. One is active, highlighted in turquoise now, and which is actually to scan the marker to enable the other tasks. So we can tap this highlighted element, or we can also go through the bottom tab bar, and then we come to the next screen, which is a camera modal. So here we are on a different screen level now. And on this screen, we encounter the first time, for you at least, the digital host, which is a neutral kind of bot, and providing the participants or users with introduction here, for example, to place or please hold the camera so that the marker fits the frame. And of course, when we find the marker, we scan the marker, and then we get to the next screen. We are still in camera mode, and have the RL type sculpture as an example here on the screen. And from this screen, we get to further content, because here we have 2 CTRs, one info button that is actually the same button as we saw already in the usability testing mid-fidelity prototype, the project info, and another option, the contribute button, through which we would have the option to contribute in this RL sculpture. So no matter which way we go, we will go to the next level screen, which is the project info screen, content with a picture, text, and also further tasks. So from there, we would get to, as an example, to this next screen, a task screen, where we can leave feedback to this special project, as an example here. And yeah, just to give you an example of the different screen levels. And of course, we were discussing a lot, okay, and how do we get back? How does it work with the navigation? What makes sense if we close, for example, this project 1? Where should we land? Should we land on the map again? But definitely, we thought it makes sense to end up again in the camera mode, because we still have this option to contribute in the IR sculpture again, if we go for the info button, or the other way around. And yeah, also if we want to scan another project, because some projects were in the same room in an exhibition space in a location. So that makes total sense. But yeah, we were discussing a lot. So there were different use cases, different flows. And yeah, we were testing that with our team to find yeah, a consistent way of navigating between those levels. So, and how can we support users of not getting lost between those levels if user flows get too complex? Yeah, probably just starting right in the beginning with a clear onboarding. I just added one onboarding screen here where we present the markers, because as I said, marker is a really essential feature for this app, because all the content is really related to the marker. So we see the different marker types that we encounter throughout the whole location, and we explain it how it works, that you have to scan them. A second thing was that we had this digital host that I already mentioned, giving advice or instructions for tasks to fulfill. Also working as a reminder if you haven't done your task and it says like knock knock, please check your open challenges. But also for AR screens, just a small hint that you know how to tilt your camera, move it up or down, that just to make sure that all people see the AR sculpture, because sometimes you have to go back and just yeah, move your phone a bit that you see it. So just a small wrap up about outcome and learning. As I said, we added some AR guidance, and we had hints throughout the whole application through the digital host. We also have some little insights, so I can give you some numbers for the event. So as I said, 3 days, 360 users for 36 markers, 2,662 markers were scanned in total. And the highest individual scoring was 630 to make it more compatible. The amount of scoring, if you would conduct all the tasks from the 5 levels, is 360. So as you can see, there were some really ambitious users that were chasing the markers a lot and trying to yeah, have additional scoring. Our learnings was definitely to early yeah, build AR features so that we can test them also in an early state and develop them further in smaller iterations. And also, yeah, to plan enough time and budget in general for testing. So layers and animation. So this chapter is a little bit more UI related. This was for our client Weiland. We designed an AR factory tour, which was also finished quite recently. So the first tour will start pretty soon. It was a native AR app, and it's installed on iPads that visitors can borrow on site. This tool or this app yeah, completes a guided tour on site that is done by yeah, Weiland employees. And the scope was to yeah, use AR to visualize the work and production processes within the Weiland manufacturing halls. And additional feature was a data to go that visitor can collect or bookmark content when they go through the halls, and everything that they bookmark will be sent to them after the tour or after their visit. So just to get a bit again into the AR space, we have 2 worlds, really roughly. Of course, the real world, the virtual world that somehow overlap and is visible. The virtual part is visual through the device on the one hand, on the right side. there are we as users with our eyes, our ears, our senses, perceiving content, of course, in our natural surrounding and through the device. Our hands control the device, also gestures can control the device. And we have our visual layers. This can be 2D or 3D in the virtual space. We have sound and visual media like images and video that can be placed in AR space or on screen layers, but we will get a bit more in depth now on the next slide, where we talk about different layering. So I try to categorize those layering a bit, hope they become clear. So there's one that I would say is static layers, probably more 2D, as we can see here also on the screen. That's navigation elements, so really basic and important elements like the header here we have for the Violent application, and also on the left we have language buttons. On the right side there's a bookmark button, which is also essential and should be seen all the time. And those are consistent layers that are attached to the screen, and they don't move, they are really static. Then we have IR objects that are dynamic layers. As we can see here, they are attached to a certain real object. In this case, we see an object standing in a manufacturing hall, and we have a 3D object that it is attached. And here we have another visual layer that is on top, actually. And we see this is dynamic. It reacts depending on how we hold the device. And then we have another layer that is attached to an AR object. So we can see it does. These are, for example, those floating elements that we see, descriptional labels, for example, here, the Verflüssiger, whatever you saw. And those are also dynamic, and they can be 2D or 3D. In our case, we decided to have them 2D because the advantage of having them 2D, they are part of the hierarchy. So in terms of color coding, but also when we refer to text, which is always in the same size, and it's not distorted. It doesn't change the direction. So that's probably better in terms of readability and accessibility. And then we have another layer. Oops, sorry. The media content, audio, video, images. And this can actually be both. So we can have them dynamically or static layers, and they can be in-screen attached to the screen or in IR space. So it really depends on the experience you're creating. In art, in this case for Weiland, we decided, because we had a lot of video content for the different stations, and we decided to have them attached to the screen in 2D, just to make sure that visitors really have a good experiences, and that videos are not getting lost, because what might happen if they are attached in the augmented reality space, if you start a video, then you go further with your device, and then you lose track. So the video will play in the background, you still hear the sound, for example, but you don't see it anymore. So this can be kind of frustrating. So to make sure that doesn't happen, we attach it to the screen. Animation and media is, it's kind of an extension of what I said before, because animation can support the users as a guidance, but also support different layers. For example, those dynamic layers I was talking about. For example, animation connection lines can show connectivity. In this example, this is static, but in the first picture we see how the processes are connected, how and this can be can also support the app itself, that it becomes more vivid with animation. This can be smart micro animations for several elements. We also have some small arrows that are pointing the way, that you sometimes know, okay, from this experience, I can go to the next one, or to also highlight several prompts for users. We can have detailed animation as on the second screen, where we explain objects. For example, complex machinery. And also add different further content to that with those floating labels. And the third screen is an example of the video attached to the screen. So we can move the video on a horizontal axis, but it will stay attached to the screen. So again, a short wrap up of the project. So we have detailed AR 3D objects that we saw, and this is combined with a rather minimalistic design approach for other UI elements. Videos are attached to the screen due to a big amount of video content, as I mentioned before. We try to keep a clear order for the different layers to create some orientation and navigation for the user. And learning, this is, I think, the difference between the project we had before to this one, that this one is a guided tour. So we have a real person standing there that is able to answer questions and give feedback. So we don't need a lot of text. We don't need the digital host for this case. But still, I guess visual guidance is still appropriate and helps for the experience also, to guide and let the user explore the content for different stations on their own. Daniel.
Yes. Thank you so much so far. I think until now we covered a bit of what is going on in the app itself, concept-wise and development-wise, design-wise. Actually, I think one of the outcomes so far could possibly be augmented reality is breaking its boundaries, and it's not only about what is going on in the app, but it's actually about what's going on in space. So like in the real space around. So, and I took the screenshot for this today because I like this very much. This is actually from an internal testing that we had a testing session at Fluor. I don't know which app, but we tested some augmented reality. And what you can see is like that people are either pointing at any direction or look a bit wondering like where the AR experience right now is, because that can happen a lot. So the 4 topics we wanted to raise a bit of awareness right now you have to take into account when you talk about or think about augmented reality is, first of all, the dimensions. It's like, how large is it? The boundaries. So where does it start? Where does it stop? What are safe spots? It's continuity. So if I have multiple stations, let's talk like that. It's not just one AR experience I have in one app, but multiple, like, how can I proceed from one to another? And at last, like, how the orientation. So how do I find where I need to go? So let's jump shortly into these topics. So first of all, dimension is an easy topic. At least it seems like this for the question. So you can either have very small scale AR experiences, or you can have very large scale ones. So from the left side, we did something for Vodafone, which was more like a very nice gimmick experience design. You have a small Christmas tree you can decorate, and then have this AR experience on your smartphone, or on the right one, Weiland that Manuela just presented, where you have like, it's a huge space. So you walk like, I don't know, when you're done with the tour, you have half a kilometer or something like that. So the first question to ask is, how large is it? So, or more precisely, what is the relation between the user, his or her device, and the AI experience? So will it always be in the same spot? So is it a situation that the user can expect, or can it be like somewhere else? And a third is it foolproof? Like, will all people always get the experience? Like a classic one that we encountered a couple of times, to be honest, is that people were very close to scan a marker, and then nothing happens, like, or nothing really happens. Like, you get some visual feedback, and then you have to tell the people, you have to point it up a bit. So then they point up to see the 3D part, because they missed it, that it's half a meter above the marker. So these are, I think, the first topics that we always think about when we start with concepting AR applications. What's this situation going to be like? The second one is the boundaries. So first of all, what degree of freedom do we provide? So can people move freely? I think this will more be a topic for the larger scale ones. So if I have something on my desk, I sit in front of it. It's a very thankful situation design-wise because nothing much can go wrong. But if it's starting to grow or get the larger experiences, are people allowed to walk around? Does the application provide this? To what degree does it provide this? And what does happen if people leave the expected space? So I don't know, can they go behind it? And does the installation still work when you have all the text labels oriented to the other side? And third of all, a lot of questions that need to be raised are, what are not the success stories, but also what are the fail stories? So what happens if the application loses track? What happens if the marker is out of bounds? What happens if the user, I don't know, holds his finger on the camera and the whole thing loses track? So there's a lot to take into consideration where you really have to think about what is going on in this space and not only in this narrow boundary of the app or the device itself. Third one we brought today is a topic of continuity. So actually, I didn't notice before, but quite a lot of AI experience that we do, they have different stations. So it's not the one-shot experience where you scan a marker and dive into it and have a nice journey going on. Oftentimes, it will be accompanied by some kind of story. For instance, like we have here for Siemens, the mobility movers, different stations, they were scattered around Munich. People can go ahead and scan the marker on each station and have different stories, different icons, different personas, like different content to perceive. So the big question is, how do users change the position in between, and how do they know? Like, do they know from other sources? Does the app provide this? Does it engage? Like, yeah, okay, that was cool. The second one is the app closed in between, or do you have to keep it open? I mean, you can't force the users, so probably something to think about both cases. So do they close, or can they jump in to some other part of the journey, like mid-term in between it, or do they have to start over? And will it be the same mechanics that they already learned? So is it the next station, does it have the same mechanics that we already had before? So these are probably interesting topics to think about when you're asking about thinking about continuity. And at last, the big topic of orientation or guidance, like we had it before on different tasks, is how can you point users to the next direction? So where is the next spot? So or if they are pointing in a different direction, I found this a nice example you have here for Weiland. We have these arrows, they're basically on the floor, and they will always point you in the direction. So if you ever get lost, you can point at the floor and you will see where you have to look, where's the action going on right now. Because this actually happens a lot. It's a new technology and people are, I mean, most of you guys probably know this, people can be frustrated or overwhelmed by a user interface, and now take into account they're standing there in some room with the new technology they never got it in touch with the user interface. They have to understand with the experience that is going on, with animations that is running, with the pop-up that's coming and calling to action, and then find what it's all about, and in the end perceive the content take to. So it's very, very, very complex situation for users. I think to give a general answer is keep it really, really simple as possible. And last for this one, sorry, can you go back one? No problem.
Sorry.
No, it's the other direction. At last, I think for one project, an interesting observation that we made is, when is one of the experiences or one of the stations over? So if I scanned it and I perceived all the content, how do people know that they are done now here and have to move over? So there are a lot of very small detailed topics that will pop up with this. Now we can go over. Okay, at last, how to get started. It's a bit of a mixture now, actually, because it can be a hard topic to jump into. So I will start now with the hardest part of it. So what we use for most of the native AI experiences is Unity. Unity is a full-fledged game engine, so it's a very, very, very complex and overwhelming piece of software. And to be honest, it has a steep learning curve, but I think when you over the first hill, it will come first, then you can prototype and develop very rapidly and have real augmented reality applications on your phone, at least for testing purposes. And there are lots of tutorials that ignore all the beginners topics and will jump right into how to get your first AR done. It's a cool thing, but it will get technical. I think more easy approach for really trying things out and without all the too much technical details is Spark AR. It's the software from Meta now, so for Instagram, so you can design Instagram filters with it. There's a lot of content for you, and it does provide the right technology, but leaves out all the complex surroundings. So it's super cool to just try out stuff. You can just easily build a filter to tap on the table and the model will pop up or whatever. But it's good for it's a lot less technical, but still good for trying out actual AR stuff. Something I wasn't. I was considering throwing this slide out, but I kept it in. I stumbled upon a speaker's talk on the Apple WWDC from 2018. So because we are talking about today about UX and prototyping, it's maybe not the best approach for getting the first thing for AR, but it's definitely something that we will take into consideration for the next project for testing on prototyping. What the talk is about in the end is just like really getting grassroots back to arts and crafts and using just your iPhone camera and some analog crafts you build to test out interface and to test out concepts. Because like I talked before in space, a lot of these questions, a lot of topics are, does it work like expected? Where is it? Where's it? So for these parts, I think it can be a cool tool. We will definitely try this out next project. And at last, we provided, can you go over? What we did before is we made a white paper like beginning of the year. It's not too technical, but it tackles a lot of topics about AR in general that we left out today or had to leave out today. And I think it can give a good introduction, like not only what are the design aspects of this one, but also what are the general implications, what are the opportunities you have with AR. So as well from a designer developer side, as well as to what can be business impacts for this. So if you want to have more of the big picture of this was from an agency perspective, let's put it like this, this might be interesting for you. That's already it. We are at the end of this. It was a bit jumping around. We tried to tackle the most interesting parts that we encountered with our projects, and we hope that is helped a lot and helped to get some insights. And we're looking forward to your questions and hope to answer them all properly. And from the two of us, thank you so much for the opportunity today. And Manuela, thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.